Was Jessica Tarlov served a reality check on her own network? This spat with Candace Owens remains one of her most fiery exchanges on the MSM. Back when there was a string of events with conservative women politicians being publicly shamed for their policies over the border crisis, or excluded from their role in modern feminism, take a look at this.
I think we can all agree that things have gotten ugly. It has become so hateful. It's become so divisive. Candace, is there a double standard with women on the right, you think?
Of course, there's a double standard. I mean, it's incomprehensible and indefensible, and anybody with a modicum of decency will admit that what's going on here is wrong. I can't even fathom a world where Obama's daughters are threatened with pedophilia by somebody in Hollywood in the same week that someone in his administration is kicked out of a restaurant with 7 members of their family just for wanting to eat. We would never hear the end of the claims of racism. This would not be allowed whatsoever, and it should not be allowed just because this is Donald Trump's administration.
There were 2 somewhat disturbing incidents of female members of the Trump administration being heckled or kicked out of restaurants that revealed an ominous bleeding out of public resentment into the private individual lives of politicians. Then White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders was the center of one such controversy when she asked to leave the Red Hen restaurant in Virginia by the co-owner because she saw her as the face of Trump's border and immigration policies that had been resulting in the separation of families and children. Incidents like this occasionally do happen to public-facing officials, but this time there was something more alarming. The calls to close the walls on Republican politicians in public and heckle them out of any restaurant or gas station were being raised from high up among the Democratic Party. Representative Maxine Waters even said, and I quote, "If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd, and you push back on them and you tell them they're not welcome here anymore, anywhere." And the result of that was something that you can predict. It led to more such incidents with unguided public anger, making female politicians the target of the people's wrath over what they believed were cruel and inhumane policies on border controls. Watch Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen be shouted at and heckled out of a restaurant, creating a larger wave of fear among politicians visiting public places.
How dare you spend your evening here eating dinner as you're complicit in the separation and deportation of over 10,000 children separated from their parents? How can you enjoy a Mexican dinner as you're deporting and imprisoning tens of thousands of people who come here seeking asylum in the United States? We call on you to end family separation and abolish ICE!
Abolish ICE! Abolish ICE! Abolish ICE!
Abolish ICE!
Shame!
Looking at all of this and the brazen calls for more of this to happen by the politicians on the other side, perhaps it's easy to see why Candace would ask us to consider the consequences of this if the sides were reversed. The issue of family separations on the border as a result of Trump's zero-tolerance policy was also claimed by feminists as their own, and any woman that supported the policy was excluded from the larger feminist conversation.
The other side to the issue is the fact that Republican women want to be deemed feminists, and they want to have the same kind of clout as women on the left who are actually advocating for policies that help women, whereas the policies out of this administration actually hurt them, like refusing to raise.
Women that work for the president, they wouldn't say that. They would say actually the opposite. They would say that we believe in these issues and we feel like they help women.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want, but the statistics don't lie. We know that if you raise the minimum wage, 2/3 of people in this country on the minimum wage are women. They need that help. We know that there is assault on women's health care rights from this administration.
Those are euphemisms for very different topics. Having a different stance on abortion or universal basic income has nothing to do with someone's feminist credentials. And it's that insistence on a one-dimensional reading of how to advance women's rights that really irks someone like Candace Owens. In 2016, for example, over 45% of the female electorate voted for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. Does that exclude those women from the feminist conversation too? Of course not. Does it mean they probably have a different view on how to advance female rights than the standard liberal feminist answer, I think that's a better explanation. It's that selective and exclusionary strand of modern third wave feminism that just does not sit well with Candace, as evidenced by this response next, where the discussion starts to get heated.
Jess, please, I hate this selective feminism that we hear on the left all the time, okay? Well, don't make this a feminism issue, because it's not a feminism issue.
It is,
when you're going out and attacking women, you're not, I'm not done, okay? When you're going out and attacking women, you are not a feminist. This is not defensible whatsoever. And you sit here and you say that it's because you care about mothers. The basis of this is that people are upset that illegal immigrants are being separated from their mothers. Why don't you refocus some of that energy to the black community? They've been having their families separated. In fact, it's subsidized in the black community. You appreciate single motherhood. You are giving more money to families for fatherless absence. So all of this selective fake outrage, when you guys do not have the same defenses for the black community, is really lost on me. And it's time's up on this altogether. I think the black community has had enough of you guys being selectively outraged for parents of illegal immigrants, but not for the parents of the black community who have been separated from their family for about 6 decades now.
Perhaps that's a problem with modern third wave feminism being so woven into the left's progressive agenda, rather than being a broad idea that everyone from across the political spectrum can get behind. That's also why you see Jessica Tarlov introduce that into other ideas on the same side, like reproductive rights and economic redistribution, and use that to distract whether conservative women really deserve to be part of the feminist conversation. And Candace Owens has never shied away from criticizing modern feminism as something that wants to destroy the family unit, even going so far as to call it the enemy of Black Americans in her 2020 book, Blackout. But as you can tell from Jessica Tarlov's response next, perhaps there's a frustration over the border policies from a feminist lens that stops her from condemning female conservative politicians being heckled.
Do you think that Kirstjen Nielsen should be harassed because of her position and because what is going on with immigration? Do you think because of that she deserves to be treated the way that she does? She was essentially forced out of a Mexican restaurant, protesters in there. You may disagree with her, but do you think the way she's been treated is fair?
I think that what Kirstjen Nielsen did in initially coming out and lying about what this president's policy did, then having to backtrack on it,
that wasn't
my question, though,
Jessica. That wasn't my question, though.
I think that people should have civil conversations about it and certainly have every right as a public official to come up to her table and to call her out on her lies and this administration's lies. If she wants to leave because of it, that's on her.
That's a slippery slope of incivility that would damage our politics if it started happening across the board. Even a politician that you don't like has a life outside of public service, and though you may disagree with them vehemently, encouraging a culture that stifles the environment for them everywhere they go, that is bound to end in more harm than good. The first step to reconciling political differences is to assume that people on the other side are not operating from a place of malice, but political difference. Female conservative politicians aren't a misnomer or a misfit, but embody a degree of disillusionment over the feminist status quo and the insistence that there's only one road to female empowerment. Candace Owens is an embodiment of that, transcending her gender and race while stepping aside from the typical feminist conversation. She's been one of the loudest voices criticizing the social shift to the left in recent decades. And it's that criticism that results in a different conception of things like gender equality, abortion rights, and handling the impact on families caught up in the border crisis.